Coco Gauff was 1 point away from being eliminated earlier in this tournament. 1 point. Now she's back in the Rome final, and suddenly the entire WTA has another problem to worry about before Roland Garros. Because this version of Coco Gauff feels different, not louder, not more emotional, more dangerous. And honestly, the scariest part might be this. Her biggest weakness finally started looking like a strength against Sorana Cirstea. That changes everything. For most of this Rome run, Gauff has been surviving chaos. 3-set battles, momentum swings, tight pressure moments, matches where it felt like she was constantly solving problems on the fly instead of fully controlling opponents. That kind of tennis can build toughness, but it also raises questions. Can you keep surviving physically against elite players on clay? Can you keep escaping dangerous moments without eventually crashing out? Against Cirstea, Gauff finally gave the answer people were waiting for. Yes, and she did it in straight sets. That matters more than the score itself. Because sometimes the most important sign in tennis isn't whether a player wins, it's whether they suddenly start winning cleanly. That's exactly what happened in Rome. Now let's be honest. The match didn't begin perfectly for Gauff at all. Sorana Cirstea came out aggressive immediately and broke her opening service game. For a moment, it looked like another messy, emotional battle might be coming. And honestly, that wouldn't have shocked anybody. Cirstea has quietly become one of the more dangerous veterans on tour because she swings freely when confident. She already pushed Gauff hard in Madrid earlier this clay season, even taking the first set before eventually losing. So this wasn't some easy semi-final, but after that early break, something changed in Gauff's body language. She stopped reacting emotionally. She settled. That maturity stood out immediately. For years, people have talked about Coco Gauff's athleticism, defense, and competitive fire. Those qualities were obvious even when she was a teenager, shocking the tennis world. But the biggest question surrounding her career has always been consistency under pressure, especially on serve. And against Cirstea, the serve finally looked reliable. Not perfect, reliable. That distinction is huge, because Gauff doesn't actually need a Serena Williams-level serve to dominate women's tennis. She already has elite movement, elite defense, and elite competitiveness. If the serve simply becomes stable enough to avoid collapsing under pressure, her ceiling becomes terrifying. Rome may have shown the beginning of that evolution. She landed nearly 80% of first serves in this match. That number jumps off the screen immediately because when Gauff gets first, serves in consistently, her entire game opens up. Suddenly, she controls points earlier. Suddenly, her forehand becomes more aggressive. Suddenly, opponents stop attacking second serves constantly. That changes the emotional dynamic of matches completely. And perhaps most importantly, it changes how confident Gauff feels inside rallies. You could see that confidence growing against Cirstea as the match progressed. Even when rallies became messy, Gauff stayed calm. She trusted her movement, trusted her patterns, trusted her serve. That trust has not always existed consistently in big moments. Now it's starting to appear at exactly the right time of the season, which should absolutely scare the rest of the WTA before Roland Garros. Because let's remember something important here. Coco Gauff is still only 22 years old, yet she's already reached 7 WTA 1000 finals. 7. That's an absurd achievement for someone that young in such a deep era of women's tennis. And unlike some younger stars who rely mostly on raw athleticism, Gauff keeps evolving tactically too. That's what makes her trajectory so fascinating. The player we're watching now is smarter than the teenage version who first exploded onto the tour. More patient, more physically controlled, more aware of momentum swings, and perhaps most importantly, far more resilient mentally. Her own comments after the match revealed that mindset perfectly. She openly admitted she was nearly out of the tournament earlier in Rome. Instead of hiding from those struggles, she embraced them. That tells you something important about where her confidence is right now. She's no longer expecting perfect tennis from herself. She's learning how to survive imperfect days. That's championship growth, because the truth about Grand Slam tennis is this: nobody dominates perfectly for 2 straight weeks anymore. Modern tennis is too physical, too deep, too mentally exhausting. Champions survive difficult moments first, then peak at the right time. That might be exactly what Gauff is doing in Rome. And now suddenly, the Rome final feels massive for multiple reasons. Because waiting on the other side could be Iga Swiatek or Elina Svitolina. And honestly, both matchups carry enormous emotional weight. If it's Swiatek, we immediately get one of the defining rivalries of this era again. The queen of clay against the player many believe could eventually take that throne permanently. That matchup always feels bigger than one tournament. Swiatek just demolished Jessica Pegula and reminded everyone what peak clay court tennis looks like. Heavy topspin, relentless movement, suffocating pressure. But Gauff is evolving too. And unlike many players, she actually has the athleticism to survive physically against Swiatek for long stretches. The issue historically has been whether she could consistently hurt the pole offensively. A stronger serve changes that equation, even slightly. Now, if the final ends up being Gauff versus Svitolina, the emotional dynamic becomes completely different. That turns into a battle of endurance and mentality between two elite movers. And honestly, that could become physically brutal on clay. But regardless of the opponent, the biggest story might simply be this. Coco Gauff looks ready. Ready emotionally. Ready physically. Ready tactically. That's a huge development for women's tennis because for a while Gauff felt stuck between phases. Good enough to consistently make deep runs, but not always complete enough to fully dominate elite opponents. Now the pieces seem to be connecting faster. And there's another important layer to this too. The pressure around Gauff has always been enormous. American tennis fans have been waiting for a consistent superstar capable of carrying the sport globally after Serena Williams. Every tournament, every loss, every technical issue gets analyzed endlessly around Gauff because expectations became massive when she was still basically a child. That kind of pressure breaks some athletes. Gauff seems to be slowly learning how to use it instead. That emotional growth matters just as much as forehands and serves. You could feel it during this Rome semifinal. Earlier in her career, losing that opening service game might have created frustration and panic. Against Cirstea, she simply recalibrated. That's maturity. And honestly, it's probably one reason her clay season suddenly feels so dangerous. Because clay rewards emotional discipline more than any other surface. Long rallies force patience. Momentum swings happen constantly. Players must solve problems physically and mentally over multiple hours. Gauff is becoming better at exactly those challenges. And once her serve stabilizes even slightly, she becomes a nightmare matchup for almost everybody on tour. Think about it. Elite speed, elite defense, improving offense, a stronger serve, massive competitive fire. That combination can absolutely win multiple French Opens someday. Maybe sooner than people think. Now, there are still valid concerns, of course. The forehand can still break down under extreme pressure occasionally. Double faults still appear at bad moments sometimes. There are stretches where her aggression disappears too much. But that's what makes Rome so encouraging for her fans. The progress feels real. Not dramatic, real. And real improvement is what eventually creates champions who last for years instead of flashing briefly. There's also something symbolic about her returning to the Rome final specifically. Last year, she reached this stage and fell short. Now she's back immediately. That consistency at a major clay event matters psychologically. Players remember these environments. They remember the crowds, the conditions, the pressure moments. Returning to the same stage with more confidence can completely change outcomes. Gauff now has that opportunity. And honestly, women's tennis may be entering one of its most exciting phases in years because of players like her. Swiatek still dominates clay historically. Sabalenka brings overwhelming power. Rybakina remains terrifying when healthy. Now Gauff looks like she's adding the missing layers to become a true weekly threat against all of them. That creates incredible tension heading into Roland Garros. Because suddenly the women's draw feels completely alive. No easy predictions, no guaranteed champion, just multiple elite players evolving at the same time. And Gauff may be evolving fastest of all right now. What impressed me most against Cirstea wasn't even the winners or statistics. It was the calmness. Champions eventually develop emotional silence in big moments. They stop looking rushed internally. They trust themselves even when matches become uncomfortable. Gauff looked closer to that version of herself in Rome. And if she fully unlocks that mindset with her physical gifts, the rest of the tour could be in serious trouble for a very long time. Now I want to hear from you. If the Rome final becomes Coco Gauff versus Iga Swiatek, who are you taking on clay right now? And do you think Gauff's improved serve is finally enough to make her a true Roland Garros favorite? Because after Rome, one thing feels very clear. Coco Gauff is no longer just chasing greatness. She's getting dangerously close to becoming the center of women's tennis. For more emotional tennis stories, rivalries, drama, and deep analysis from around the tennis world, stay right here on Tennis IQ, where tennis is always bigger than the scoreboard.